Welcome to the Dell Technologies PodFerence After Show. I'm your host, Jill Schlesinger from the Jill on Money podcast. Now, this is always sort of a weird way to start a program, but I live to make lawyers happy. So let me read this engaging disclaimer. You ready? This video meeting may be live streamed via the internet, you've heard of that, or one or more social media platforms. And it may be recorded, it may be played back in portions, or in its entirety by Odyssey, Group M, or Dell On Air on their websites, on social media pages. So by participating in this video meeting, you are consenting to the use and distribution of the video meeting, including your image, your likeness, statements, and actions. If you do not consent, you must leave the meeting now, right now. If you engage in any inappropriate activity or behavior during the video meeting, you may be removed from the video meeting with or without notice. All right, whew. Legal team, I think we can tighten that up a little bit. Okay, so why are we here today? We are here to talk about the unique challenges that small businesses have confronted amid a once-in-a-generation pandemic, how they are adapting to a post-COVID world. And, you know, we've been talking a lot about small businesses. I think that definitionally, our guests that we're bringing on today may not necessarily be a small business, but they started small. They just keep getting bigger. So our guests today, Alex Mather and Adam Hansmann, they're the co-founders of The Athletic, which is a direct-to-consumer digital sports media company. They founded it in 2016. Now, here's my full disclosure. I'm a subscriber. The Athletic is where I get all of my in-depth coverage of my beloved New York Islanders and my not-so-beloved Mets and Jets. Today, we're going to talk to Alex and Adam about how they started this business and how COVID has impacted the rocket ship growth of their company, what lies ahead for them in a quickly consolidating media world. So Alex and Adam, welcome to the After Show.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
Hey, Jill. And thanks for being a subscriber.
I know, right? I mean, I don't need to be like, I don't mean to be one of those people who is a little bit of a fangirl, but I am. So why don't you tell us a little bit of the origin story of how you guys started started the company and how you got to where you got to?
Sure. So I'll start. I met Adam at our previous startup together, which is called Strava. A social network for endurance fitness nerds. And we got to know each other over a couple of years there. And Strava is a wonderful subscription business built for really passionate athletes. And had an idea to take a lot of what we did well at Strava to sports fans, knowing that a lot of the same passion, or at least the levels of passion, are there with sports fans, whether it be the Islanders, or I'm from Philadelphia, so I'm an Eagles fan, Flyers fan, Sixers fan. And so convinced Adam to leave. This is sort of the end of 2015, and take everything we learned about subscription and go headfirst into the media industry, which we knew nothing about at the time.
And Adam, when you were at Strava, what exactly were you doing there? And did you think Alex was crazy when he first came to you with this idea?
So my background was more on the business, finance side, and operations. I was working directly with Strava's CEO on that sort of very, very different sort of side of the brain. And so Alex and I, formed a pretty close relationship and just found that we had a really kind of complementary set of skills. And so when Alex left Strava, he and I sort of immediately struck up a conversation and just felt that rapport in the Valley. We call it founder dating. So Alex and I went on a few dates over coffee, and just both of us being kind of just tremendously passionate sports fans. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Big Reds, Bengals, and Notre Dame fan. So, Alex and I just hit it off, kind of a unique combination of our skills, plus that shared passion around media. And we were admittedly new to media, but we said, let's give this a try.
Was Strava subscription based? Is that the world you were coming from, and that's why you made the leap? Because obviously, there were many choices for the athletic coming out of the gate, right?
That's right. And so Strava is a subscription business to this day. When I joined the company, I think it was 7 employees and about 1,000 or 2,000 users total, and maybe a couple hundred paying users. When I left, tens of millions of users, hundreds of thousands of people paying around the world. 70% of that audience was outside of the US when I left Strava. So what I would say, the skill set that we established at Strava was really the DNA of a subscription business, which is, in the world of media in 2015, there were very few primary subscription businesses. And so most were focused on advertisements. And, Netflix was sort of just getting through the Quickster phase. And so we had a ton of institutional knowledge around the mechanics of subscription, cohorts, churn, retention, win backs, the whole thing, which, sort of under the schematics of the business, we understood very well. Now we had to obviously learn how to build a media company, which was obviously the consumer aspect of the business, but we felt very, very confident in building sort of the back office.
So talk a little bit about how you did start. You're wrapping your arms around a big category called sports. So was there an idea let's start with the NFL? That is the most popular, the most highly engaged sports, professional sports league. Or did you start with college because you both are college nerds, Penn State versus Domers? I don't even know what to say. This is crazy.
Right. No, I think there was a couple businesses really exploding at the time, like Uber, Lyft. And something that they did that was really interesting from a business perspective was they really looked at things city by city. And so they built a playbook for a city, figured out how to build the two-sided marketplace for them, which was drivers and then riders. In our case, we had the similar thing, which was, okay, let's take a city, and we actually launched in Chicago, and Adam can give you some funny details there. But we first had to find great journalists, and then we had to find an audience. We really said, let's establish a playbook that we can then take elsewhere. And so maybe Adam, you can fill everyone in on how we picked Chicago of all places.
Yeah. So for a while at the beginning, people actually thought Alex and I were either from Chicago or based in Chicago. We are not, and we're not, but we actually looked at it as Alex said, let's find a market where we can just kind of get started. And, a couple of the journalists that we reached out to in Chicago, we reached out to them on LinkedIn. That's how little we knew about Jill. You're a journalist, and know that that's not where you reach out to someone. But we luckily got in touch and found a group of folks that were excited about the idea. And Chicago for us was a big market with, 5 pro teams, lots of interest. And we actually thought the Chicago Cubs were going to be kind of an interesting story in 2016, which they ended up winning the World Series. So that was a very good omen for us. But, really we had a team of 3 or 4 folks in the beginning, and, launched and just got to work learning what users wanted, what fans wanted, what made the staff itself get excited about their jobs. And, after, 9 months in Chicago, we said, we're ready to go to the next market. And we sort of repeated that process 50 or 60 times over the last 5 years.
And so when you talk about that, this is a startup, you have this idea, you have the business model. You guys are the first 2 employees, employees 1 and 2-ish. Who's hired next? How did you approach this?
Yeah, I mean, we started with journalists, and it was kind of a crazy aspect in hindsight, in that you have two folks coming out of Silicon Valley, based in San Francisco, working at venture-backed startups for a while. And I would say of our first 100 hires, probably 90 were journalists. And what we realized pretty quickly is the fastest way for us to grow was to create more content. And it's sort of Netflix 2017, maybe, where it's like, let's start when we started talking about Netflix and the billions of dollars of content spend is like, a very instructive playbook for us, which was, obviously take some zeros off, but, we're focused on journalists, and, the more we can hire, the more we can cover. Can we get, Arthur Staple to cover the Islanders, right? Can we get this person to cover the Eagles? Can we get that person to cover the Bengals, right? And so, the more great folks we could hire, the faster our business could grow. And we didn't really need a ton of back office. And I think you probably hear a lot of this in newer media companies, in the percentage of the company that is in the newsroom or in the content creation job space is much higher percentage, maybe compared to older legacy companies, which have, enormous back offices. So we were very, very lean for the first 3 years.
And if I may be so bold to ask, because, maybe I need a job someday. Do you pay them salary? Are they on some sort of rev share based on anything? No, just straight up salary.
Yeah. So we really took a lot of the great aspects of Silicon Valley equity, every journalist we hire is a full-time employee. They all get equity in the company. In a similar fashion to our HQ employees, our engineers and our designers and our, those folks. And so, we really are committed to building a company that's, durable, that these folks feel a part of for a long period of time. And we really, really treat everyone like partners in the business.
So, let's fast forward to the beginning of 2020. You guys are rocking. Things are great. And then this COVID freeze shuts down professional sports to some extent for a while. What happens? Did you lose subscriptions during that time? Did people cancel? What was going on for you guys?
Yeah, what's fascinating, and I'm sure Adam can provide a lot more details, is we were at the center of what in the United States was sort of the catalyst for people taking this seriously, was the NBA shutting down. Yeah. We all remember where we were when either Tom Hanks announced that he got COVID, or the NBA shut down. And at that moment, I think as founders, as executives across the world, folks are wondering what's going to happen next. None of us could have predicted what did happen or what continues to happen. But for us, it was really about getting our people back safe. We kind of forget how scary those first few days, where we're using Lysol on our vegetables and things. And, we're afraid of doorknobs and everything. And, for us, we had journalists all around the world traveling. We were at the epicenter in Utah. Our folks broke a lot of that news. And so getting our folks home, getting our folks safe, taking stock, understanding where things are going to go, and then really just laying out the various scenarios that could unfold. And what we saw in our business was, folks were a little confused as to what was going to happen in sports, but our subscribers stuck with us. And I think you hear this a lot from subscription businesses is, they're really like a slower growth model. You don't get that exponential traffic just off the charts and then you just disappear from the face of the earth. Yeah. There's still, I think I was reading 150,000 people paying for AOL internet. Right. So the subscription businesses take a while to slow down too. And we didn't see any change in retention at all.
Yeah. And the really good news from a coverage standpoint, obviously it was scary and fascinating to be sort of a part of the story in terms of, covering sports, and there's no sports. So we're sort of covering this industry that's kind of on hold and it's frozen, and we're part of that ecosystem. And I think our staff really did rise to the challenge of saying, hey, if there aren't games, but there's still stories to tell, there's still original reporting to be done. There were still some amazing events that sort of helped us kind of hold over. The NFL draft last year set I think it was the all-time record for the most people watching the NFL draft. And so, luckily for us, we're not a rights holder. We're here to tell stories, and the subscription model, as Alex said, really lends to people not sort of, the business doesn't go to zero, right? And our subscribers stuck with us. Our staff held it together. We held it together. It was bumpy, but we, really just relied on communicating every single day with our team. Here's the update. Here's the news. And here's what we know, and not sort of overpromise, but really just try to be as honest as possible.
So where do you see your growth from here? I mean, you guys have a presence overseas as well. So talk a little bit about your international markets. We know that Netflix clearly has the biggest jump ahead of anyone in the, video on demand universe. And I'm intrigued to hear about what your plans are internationally.
Yeah. And, we look at a lot of these companies, Spotify, Netflix, and see their growth internationally. And it's often with, media companies in the US an afterthought, right? It's like just all bulked into rest of world. And so sports just isn't built that way. Right. If you think about what's going to happen in about a month's time with the Euros championship and the big soccer tournament, happening in Europe, you're going to see just, off the charts interest across the globe. We've got the Olympics, the World Cup. Sports is truly global. And, it is, if not as passionate, it is more passionate outside of the US in many cases. And so we look at that passion and say, well, we've got to get, in front of these sports fans everywhere over time. And that's going to take time. We've got many funny stories of, trying to hire folks in Canada in our first year of business and not really being incorporated in Canada and not knowing how the little details of how to do that. But when we said we're going to take on the Premier League in the UK, within 100 days, we were live with benefits and real paychecks and everything. And we're getting better at using those muscles of let's look at a country, let's look at the sports that they love, let's import. And you see a lot of this with Netflix, right? You can take some of the Stranger Things and bring it to people everywhere. Right. And so we have this stuff that we can export out of the US in terms of the NFL, the NBA, hockey is huge in Scandinavia, right? There's so much of our sports that people love. And then we can bring a lot of that stuff into the US, whether it be cricket, rugby, golf, tennis. This stuff travels really, really well. And so we look at it as over time, sport by sport, cover the biggest teams with the best people. And sports fans around the world will really appreciate it.
So it's sports, it's international, it's writing, it's podcasting, and videos as well. And where do you think, are you basically we'll deliver on any platform, or do you feel there are some limitations to that?
It's a good question. I think we look at our business and say, how can we bring people to The Athletic first and foremost? So, really an owned and operated model. And so, by bringing folks to The Athletic, we're willing to, try lots of things, whether it be, shorter form audio, longer form audio, storytelling audio, sort of sports radio style audio. We're very experimental in how we deliver and what we deliver, whether it be a magazine story or a quick update. And so we look at, any way we can serve sports fans with great content. And then going forward, we really look at our advantage being community. We have, millions of folks long-term, with credit cards on file, who are super fans of their teams that they follow. And they want to, chat about a match or, jump on with one of our journalists and talk about, a trade or something. Right. So we can really leverage the community for each sports team. We know how passionate each sports team is, or the fan base of each sports team. And so really leveraging that long-term is something that's kind of a unique aspect to what we do and we did this at Strava, which is go to Tokyo and find runners like you, right? And go for a group run with folks in Tokyo. And with The Athletic, it's really about, fans of Arsenal or Manchester United are everywhere, right? There's some great opportunities to bring those folks around the world together.
Adam, I'm going to come to you for this next group of questions because you're sitting in front of a Peloton bike and you're the money guy. And I see you came from venture capital and you have that background. So what about combining another subscription-based company where you have like-minded fans like, I don't know, Peloton? Would that be something that could be interesting to you guys?
Well, if there's free Peloton subscriptions or bikes in the mix for that, maybe. But no, I think in terms of exit, in terms of M&A, anything like that, the number 1, 2, and 3 rule is don't think about it, don't talk about it, and don't worry about it. We're just here to build a great company. We don't, literally, Alex and I never talk about, hey, what about combining with this company or when's the IPO? And, obviously, hopefully those are things that we believe we know we're building a really valuable company. The record will show that. And so we just don't worry about it. And those things kind of play out as they do. So who knows, but maybe Peloton, now that you've planted a seed, that could.
Thank you very much. I have another idea. Alex, what do you think about having some sort of dating app within the athletic? For example, you can't meet somebody who is a fan of the Cubs and then say they're going to go and mate with somebody who is the crosstown rival. So maybe that's a possibility. Okay, no, real question. So, obviously the universe of SPACs, of special purpose acquisition companies, is pretty vibrant right now. What do you think about this trend of the quick IPO, kind of working with maybe established media types who are looking to combine a couple of media companies? What's your view on that?
I mean, my view is always you have to just look at it as you're raising capital for what? How are you diluting the company? And what does it look like governance on the other side, right? And I think SPACs have become super popular, but at the end of the day, they're just accomplishing something that has been done for decades and will continue to be done. And I think for us, always just looking at what are we trying to accomplish as a company? Do we need more capital for it? Is being a public entity the right thing? And like Adam said, I mean, it really is stuff the best thing we can do is focus on our business and evaluate our opportunities as they come. And I think the record, like Adam said, the record will show long term. I think we're all going to say this is the great companies are great companies regardless of how they went public, right? And I don't think at this point in time the SPAC route is any different than any other route. The great public companies will operate on the other side very, very well. And the companies that are ready will do it. The companies that aren't, maybe they were tempted or maybe they weren't. It's all just a matter of where you are as a company in terms of your capital needs. So I think you'll see great stuff happen. There's a lot of money to put to work and there's a lot of great companies that need that money. And yeah, we're seeing a ton of investment interest, and that it just seems great for the ecosystem.
Well, I'm sorry, continue.
Well, I was just going to chime in, as a citizen, as a consumer, seeing the world sort of come back to normal and these companies sort of break out and do really cool things. New restaurants opening everywhere. Hopefully the rest of this year can be a pretty fun ride and a pretty positive story for a lot of companies and just people.
I got to tell you something. It's so funny because we got some questions in advance, and one was, what was the biggest criticism you heard while growing your brand? And I wonder if it was more, well, I'll ask you that question, but I have a follow-up, which is, what were the naysayers saying, besides just the criticism, which I imagine is, I don't want to pay for the stuff I can get for free. But what were the naysayers saying about your model?
Yeah, so two major things that we're really proud of, and after now 5+ years of building this business. Number one is, wait, you want to use venture capital to hire journalists? And not necessarily something you hear very often, right? It's either like, hey, build a platform and don't hire anyone, or we don't need journalism. Let's hire young people or have users create the content or something, right? And so that was number one. And I think we prove every day that the investors that did believe in us made the right decision. That you can build a great, iconic brand, with great journalists. And number two is, sort of the market and the market size. To your point, like in 2015, there were very few subscription businesses humming, especially in media and publishing. And I would say that very few, thought we would grow to the size we are now and at the rate we're growing. And, where it probably feels like obvious now. Yeah, subscription is a great business model for great content. And, it's a little bit like electric vehicles. 10 years ago, you'd be like, yeah, that's just a pain in the butt. You're never going to get from San Francisco to LA. Now it's like, well, batteries are getting better. The infrastructure is in place. Every car company is like moving to that world. And I think like where we see the world going is, some of the most powerful brands in media will have subscription as a healthy, big part of their business model. Now, it might not be the only, it might not be the biggest, but great media companies will use subscription to their advantage, in addition to obviously other things like advertising.
And I mean, is there a way that you could think about bringing, because you are at your core a subscription-based business, could you see a time where you say, you know what, maybe we'll have some free content out there? Is there some?
Totally.
Yeah,
absolutely, totally. Yeah. I mean, we're not religious about just subscription. Okay. Long term, I think there's tons of ways to, our subscribers are sports fans. Sports fans love to spend money on sports, and at the center of that, there's so many great business opportunities. We're not in any rush. Our foundation is subscription. Our commitment is subscription. But, sports fans want to spend more money on sports.
Yeah, no kidding. Do you feel like as you're recounting your origin story, do you look back and you say to yourself, that's a crazy, amazing rocket ship ride, but we're going to moderate our aspirations for the first 5 years, obviously it's straight up, right? The next 5 years, what's your hope?
Yeah, I mean, to keep going. I mean, I think like what's crazy about this is that every single day, you kind of look backwards and we now see 600 plus employees, and it doesn't feel easier, it doesn't feel smaller. The ceiling keeps going up, and it's it's electric vehicles analogy. Is the market just keeps getting bigger. More and more people are going to pay for content. Fewer and fewer media companies in the world are committed to great journalism. When you're at the center of that, the opportunities just feel like they're getting bigger. And so for me personally, I don't know how you feel, Adam, but it just keeps getting more interesting.
Yeah. And I think agreed. And like on a psychological level, you can kind of rest on the 5+ years of relative success that we've had, but there's two guys like us or two gals out there somewhere that are like thinking about how to go beat The Athletic, and we're the most competitive people, that around. And, so we just have that healthy level of paranoia, and we just want to keep pushing, keep winning.
I mean, I think that's a great place to end the conversation. Again, I think what you've built is so great. I mean, it's sort of funny. I have a number of colleagues, and I'm going to interview the guys from The Athletic. They're like, you know what? No, basically, every single one was like, get me a job. I'm like, well, since you cover, China, and you're not a sports person, not sure that there's an opportunity yet. But when you start expanding your verticals outside of sports, I think I have a lot of people who really want jobs. So it's exciting to watch it. And, I am a great sports fan, and I really hope that you guys have continued success, because it's fun watching this. It's fun watching people who seem pretty normal about like hey, not that you're not extraordinary, but like you don't seem to be wackadoos, which is very nice for people that I tend to interview in your similar position. So I think it's been really, it's encouraging. And I think that it's a great story because, again, you guys had idea, you looked at this idea and you looked at the market, you saw something and you've executed on it. So to me, this is one of those things that is pretty encouraging for anyone out there. And so I do wish you continued success because it's just incredible to watch how much you've already accomplished. So good luck and thanks for hanging with me in the after show of the PodFerence.
Thanks so much, Jill.
Thanks, Jill.
Great. Small businesses are always looking to educate themselves on the best ways to have meaningful interactions with their consumers. That's why Dell Technologies assembled an all-star lineup of podcasters to create this year's virtual conference to share advice and inspiration for small businesses. Dell Technologies is here, from keeping you connected while working remotely with Windows 10 and Microsoft Teams to providing relevant content for businesses. Follow along with all episodes of the Dell Technologies PodFerence on the Odyssey app, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And thanks for joining us for the Dell Technologies PodFerence After Show. To find more participating podcasts like the ones discussed today, search for Dell Technologies PodFerence on the Odyssey app, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts at the end of this episode, as well as the Odyssey YouTube channel. Tomorrow, get ready. We are going to discuss the 4 different types of human beings out there, why you need to know each one. We will be joined by Gretchen Rubin. Thanks so much for watching today. We'll see you tomorrow.